Good evening, everyone. What's up, Mad Dog? What's up, Hybrid? Who else we got? Give everybody a couple minutes to jump in here. Good evening, Irish Connection. How are you? You're up past your bedtime. My sister says thank you for the chips, by the way. All right. Do a little bit of adjustment here. All right. So, Irish says his Monday bedtime is normally earlier. Nice. Somebody says we lost a video on Twitch. Oh, it looks like we're back. Because I can see it. We're good. All right. So this evening, I have Adam Mackinnon with us and Trent Mercer. The things that we have in common are we worked for music stores. Trent and I both worked for Guitar Center for several years. Trent finished out his career there as a store manager unceremoniously, unfortunately. And then I also worked with Adam. He was the store manager for the direct competition in the market that we were in. So we're going to talk a little bit about the good and the bad, differences in culture, the different places, we've been, the kind of how we saw the market change and how some businesses haven't really had like a forward thinking kind of plan. You're still rooted in old concepts that, really at this point in time don't work. I will say, Trent, I don't know if you remember, I'm wearing a relic from the past.
I kind of noticed that.
Laguna Guitars Guitar Center shirt.
Laguna.
Yeah. I have so many of these damn shirts. But anyway, what we'll do is first I want to go through both of you, let you give your spiel about, where you worked in music and instrument retail. Adam, you do not have to name if you do not want to. How much time you were there or whatnot. And same thing with you, Trent. So go ahead, Adam.
Sure. So yeah, my name's Adam Mackinnon. I was in music retail for a little under 13 or 14 years, depending on how you count it. I began my career at a small operation. If you're in the industry in the top 200, I started off at about 150 or so. A small operation called Accent Music in Delaware. And then I spent about 5 years or so there, and then moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I worked for Ken Stanton Music for roughly about 7, 8 years, 7, 8 years, something like that. So that is where I came. I was a store manager for all but 1 or 2 of those years that I worked in the industry. And, independent stores. So, nothing corporate, but at the same time, went from like 150 to like, 30 on the top 200. So small and mid-sized operations in the family world.
Also, too, I want to throw out that Adam also is the creator and host of a podcast called Romantic About Baseball. And he's also an excellent damn writer. So I have links in the description of the video to his podcast and also to his Substack, where he's going to kind of outline his path through music instrument retail. I highly recommend checking it out because dude can write like ain't nobody's business. I got to give you props there. Great shit. Plus,
thank you. Thank you. There will be more. There will be more coming at some point. I should say I put the first one out and then I got distracted with other work things, but there are more.
Yeah, and plus too, I mean, he's even written training manuals. We'll just leave that for a minute. Trent, your turn.
All right, so my name's Trent Mercer. All my experience in the music instrument retail was at Guitar Center. So I think it was like 2008. I moved from Illinois, where I'm from, to Atlanta, and that was the first job I got down there. It was selling guitars on the guitar floor. So that was interesting for me because I'd never done anything like that at the time. But I really enjoyed it, and you know, things worked out that I ended up having to come back to Illinois, and I wasn't able to transfer at the time, so I quit, came back to Illinois, and then ended up getting rehired the next year in Peoria. I worked in Peoria from 2009 to 2012. In 2012, I was moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was there from 2012 until December of 2015. And I was moved to Des Moines, Iowa to become a store manager. And that is where my career with Guitar Center came to an end. It was in Des Moines, Iowa.
Sounds like a lovely place. So,
boy, all the places I've been,
yep.
Iowa was not my favorite.
So, my spiel was, I was a sales manager for what was affectionately known the Black Pearl, GC 762 in Marietta, Georgia. It was a very bizarre time for me because when I came on board, I had just got done with Hobby Lobby. And it was actually my wife who said, hey, why don't you go do something you might enjoy for a change? Well, there's a novel concept. And she said, why don't you apply for Guitar Center? Now, mind you, I come from the retail world, right? So I show up to drop off my application in like dress pants, a shirt, and a tie, doing the whole spiel. And then I get called for an interview. And at that time, our office had a couch in it. And J Bell was the store manager, and he calls me in, and I go up there, and I'm dressed like I'm interviewing for some like fucking regular retail interview, and I have to sit on this couch, and he looks at me and he says, well, why Guitar Center? And I was like, why not?
Why?
And his exact comment was, well, you've got a really pretty resume. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So that became, quite the love affair. And I will say, I'm getting old and the dates kind of get lost on me. I do know, I'm thinking at the end of my tenure there, that would be about 12 years ago, because I had a video pop up of where we had these shindigs in our garage, where all the Guitar Center people would come over and we'd drink and grill and play and whatnot. But I'm thinking around 2003, 2004 may have been when I started. I still know my employee number. I was at 054846. But at that point in time, like we were just discussing off camera, Guitar Center was a different beast. And the thing with it was a magical time because Guitar Hero, the video game, was massive. So I wound up working in the store when the business was really, really, really booming. Every kid out there that was playing the video game all of a sudden wanted to become Slash, and their parents were coming in, buying them guitars and whatnot. And also at the same time, Adam, I forgot about this, that was really when Taylor Swift started picking up. So there was a huge influx of females coming in, wanting acoustic guitars. Now, when you want to talk about culture, back then, you got a bunch of guys working in this guitar store, and it was really kind of sad because it was kind of like the cartoon dog with the tongue hanging out, and every girl that walked in, they were kind of, and
it's a very predictable
yes.
group.
And the amount of females who were so pissed off and angry because the sales guys would go in and say, oh, are you looking for a guitar for your boyfriend? And I'm like, no.
It's not patronizing at all.
So that was kind of my gig. I wound up having to move back to South Carolina. I transferred to a smaller store here. And, Adam, as in a small store that has established salespeople, and there's not a lot of volume, there's not a lot of traffic, those people have become somebody's guy. And you just can't weasel your way in there and become the guy. There just wasn't enough to go around. And so I wound up going back to regular retail. So, Adam, for you, kind of give us your perception of the difference between the independent store that you worked at up north and KSM? Like difference in culture, things you felt both did good and both did poorly.
Sure. So the biggest difference, first off, is organization. You know, the thing about music retail, and anyone who's worked there will tell you, is that you have to have a strong like organization, you know, and that's, to me, the biggest difference from Accent to KSM was that you know, at Accent it was very kind of free reign. I mean, I was literally cutting POs and running restock reports and everything within my first month of getting my keys. So it was kind of one of those things where it was almost the virtue of availability when you were there, so therefore you advance. So the thing with a store like Accent is that because it's in a small market, it was able to get away with a lot more of that type of thing. It was able to carry smaller brands, run smaller lines, thinner inventory, because you know, you're serving a state with 3 counties in it. You know, the fact is that Guitar Center didn't move into Delaware until 2011, 2012, something like that. Don't hold me to that timeline, but something along those lines. And so there just wasn't a lot out there. So the biggest difference there, when you go from there to say KSM, which is in an ultra competitive market, I had never really worked in a market like that. And the one biggest thing that jumps out at you right away is hierarchy and organization. And when you have those two things in, say, a small store and then like a medium-sized store, that's going to be the hugest difference between those two, because the hierarchy and the organization of it is both a good thing, because you know, you kind of have a roadmap, you kind of know where things are, but it's also your biggest inhibitor, because like you said, you're dealing with organization, but you know, there's always exceptions for this person or that person and this person on that day, and so it's like a small town, but they have you go from one small town where like the cat is a mayor and that's okay, and then you go to another small town where like there's an entire executive branch for 100 people. So that was the biggest difference going from those two places.
Now, Trent, the one thing I want to ask you, I mean, you spent your time at the Black Pearl. You came in under J Bell, correct?
Sure did.
All right. So tell us all right. So you know what the vibe was there. How different was it like in the Atlanta market versus, you know, moving back to Illinois?
It was harder for me in Atlanta, believe it or not, because I had to establish myself. You know what I mean? I didn't, you know, back in Peoria, I was in the music scene. I was playing in bands, playing shows all the time. I knew people. I had connections, you know what I mean? I could have an established customer base from people that I knew that were also musicians. So in Atlanta, it was like, sales was very cutthroat at the time, dude.
Yeah, I'll get into that here in a minute.
Like this was before all the culture shock started happening. So sales was very cutthroat. Like me coming in as a new guy, and especially as an out of towner, like I didn't know anybody there. You know what I mean? I was just like this dude that came walking in one day and interviewed, and you guys were like, "Oh shit, yeah, we'll hire him," and that was, you know, that was it.
Yeah.
But you know, coming in as that new guy, you'd start to make sales, and then all of a sudden, you know, you'd have another sales guy coming up to you like, "Hey man, that's my guy."
Oh yeah, we did have that.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah,
and you know, when you're new, you're kind of just like, "Oh well, okay, I guess I don't know anybody around here. Like, I guess that's his guy. Like, you know, hey, can you put me on the sale for a certain percentage because we were all in commission?"
Yep.
So
well, you know,
for that reason, I mean, like, you guys were all great. Like, I ended up becoming really good friends with a lot of you guys, and Steve, you and I have stayed in touch over the years, really since 2008.
That's
you know
correct.
what I mean? So I've developed some really long-term good friendships from people that I worked with there. Um, but that's why it was. I would say it's harder. It was harder for me there because I could come back to Peoria and let like all my people know I'm back.
Right.
And that's what happened when I came back. Like I went back to the Peoria store and just started killing it right away. And I was actually doing better sales wise in Peoria than I did in Atlanta.
Well, Atlanta was rough, and we did have a sales guy that also Adam is very familiar with, Mr. Cheney Brandon. And it was like, look, I'm not gonna lie, it was, if the ranker of sales came out the first day of the month, we would brag because one of us was over Cheney for just that one day. Obviously, it was the first day of the month, right?
Yeah, until he popped,
Yeah, and he probably didn't even work that day. And his ass come in there with his little Bluetooth headset. He walking around talking to people. All of a sudden, he's not on the ranker at all. And all of a sudden, he's got like 15 grand. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But he was entrenched. I mean, he was a very good drummer, and he had a lot of connections. He did a lot with Seven Dust, and obviously Collective Soul and those guys and whatnot. So, he had an end. T-Pain, I remember he was doing a lot with him.
Yeah, but I remember that.
Yeah, but the one thing I will say, from a culture standpoint, the one thing that Guitar Center did well at that small window, and this is something that the competitor, I felt, didn't do at all. Guitar Center, at least in our store and in our district, was way concerned about the vibe in the store. They wanted the customer to walk in and understand that, we were sales guys or whatever we were doing, but we loved what we were doing. We were having a great fucking time doing it. And, they would try to measure that. They really would. It would be like, oh, the vibe feels off. Come on, guys. Let's snap out of it. Whereas in the competition, it was kind of punitive, and there was no free thinking, and there obviously was no having a good fucking time. that just didn't wash. And but I remember times like at GC where if business was slow and the store was put together fine and whatnot, there'd be a group of us sitting in the middle of the store like jamming and like doing cover songs because it was part of the vibe. We wanted people to enjoy being there. And just on the record, coming from retail, J Bell used to say, they can say whatever they want to about me, but I hired you. and I was Merch Master Steve. And I'm proud to say my first year there, I actually clocked in $10,000 worth of overtime.
Look, Steve, I will say that I got complimented in Peoria on my merchandising skills. And I always was like, man, it was this dude, Steve, in Atlanta taught me how to set displays up like this. I always give him credit for that.
Well, it's possible too. I mean, vibe is super important. And, some of that, like a business store, district manager, owner, whatever, they'll tell you, oh, well, you have fun when things are going good. But, I used to argue, and I used to tell my team at the store that I used to run that you eventually took over, Steve, like when we were going good, that's fine. But when we weren't going good, like that was no time to walk away from that. That was, don't let the customer know that things aren't going good. That's when you need it the most. That's when you need the vibe. That's when you need that type of thing. And I think when you're not under like a micromanager or you're not under that watchful eye, it is possible to achieve that. But that's not always the case if you have someone watching.
That's correct. And the one thing I will say about that location, Adam, and this is coming from a business sense. This is coming from managing stores for 20 odd years, right? Is, when I came on board, the volume that place was doing, right? Yeah.
Fractions
honestly,
of what it was.
That entire store could have ran with 2 people working a first shift and 2 people working a second shift overlap for lunch, and that's it. But when you're required to have your entire staff of 5 to 7 people working on a Saturday, knowing good and damn well it's not going to be that busy, and you've got people walking all over each other trying to get a deal, that is just bad business. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother ball of wax there. I don't know where the discussion's going to go, but that's a whole nother topic in and of itself, where, you know, you're managing based on tradition rather than based on, you know, what the business
Correct.
actually needs.
And you were attuned to that. I mean, you knew. I mean, that was the one thing I told you,
Yeah.
you know, when I first met you. I mean, you knew what was up, but your hands were tied.
It's being in tune with the thing about when you're in a company that's a little smaller, and maybe in a corporate store like Guitar Center, there's probably a different type of position. There's always a link in the chain somewhere that sees the ground level and then gets input from the corporate level. That's the hardest position to be in, because you're keyed in on what corporate wants to do, but you also see and you know what's happening at the ground level. That was always the toughest thing for me, was always trying to discern like what ownership really wanted, and then try to find a way to dispel, you know, to get that over to the staff that clearly, like, everybody knew we didn't need to. Now, when we were going good, when that store was going good, we needed everybody there on Saturday.
You did.
But right. Well, the thing was, not every store I went to needed that. So yeah, there was a few phantom sick days that were called in. There was a few, you know, last minute food poisonings or something that happened because, you know, hey, if you didn't want to be there, then I didn't need you there, you know. And that's the thing to me is, I just feel like, you know, it is kind of unfair to judge the two based on the time frames I worked there. I mean, nothing's ever going to hold a candle to that 3 to 4 year window where GC was just firing on all fucking cylinders. I mean, that was madness. I mean, and then to go, you know, to the competition and whatnot, and learn real fast that, you know, it's going to be their way or no way. And it's fully understandable. I mean, it's their business. I mean, they can run it exactly how they choose to run it. There is nothing wrong with that, right? But you have to question some decisions and whatnot from just a business standpoint. And the one thing I wanted to talk about that encompasses both places, and I don't know if you did an accent, is what Guitar Center called the card file, and what at KSM, you know, getting the Excel spreadsheet.
Oh, Steve.
Yes.
The card file ended up becoming a monster that I don't know if you were around for when the sales follow-up system rolled out, but card file ended up becoming this monster of a sales lead program that it honestly was just a nightmare, dude. And it got to a point where we were forcing people to do it because we were being told to force people to do it.
Right. And that's the thing about, you know, I will say when we were at GC, there was some productivity that came with it. I mean, there were some results because you had certain guys, right? But you only had like a handful, you know, that you knew. You got this guy who collects like signature guitars, you know, to call that guy, and those worked. But you fast forward to like today, okay, where people are more conscious of their free time, and you've got no call lists and things like that. You know, it almost borderlines on harassment, because there's a lot of people you wind up calling who may have been in just a couple of times to get some strings or whatnot. And they either A, they're not going to answer the phone, or B, they're going to be like, why the fuck are you calling me? And to me, when you run campaigns like that, and Music Instrument Retail is not the only one, okay? I mean, there's others that do it. It borderlines harassment, and you're interfering with people's personal time. And that is something that I just feel like is archaic and needs to go away.
Well, and not to jump in front here, but like what Hero said in the comments, what did he say here? He said there seemed to be a lot of, well, it worked before, no need to reevaluate. That's what all of that is. That's what all of that is. It's kind of like fishing, I guess. Like, I know it's kind of a on the nose analogy, but when you think about it, like they use these programs, like the call out programs, because you'll call out 100 times, but you'll get 2 sales. And the whole premise is like, oh, you wouldn't have gotten those 2 sales if you didn't make those calls. So you're net 2 sales. And what else were you doing at that time? So it's like, music retail in particular, more than other industries, is built on this premise that like, oh, well, if you're not busy right at this moment, you need to be doing something. And if you're not doing, if you're not trying to generate sales on your own, then you're not being active enough. And that's why you don't have the customer base that like Cheney Brandon has. That's why you don't have that customer base, because you're not making phone calls. And it's a false premise. It's a lie.
It is.
It's not true. It's not true. I can promise you, I was not the best salesman. I kind of had it. I would turn it on when I needed it, but I didn't need to call people to sell, to be top salesman wherever I was. I didn't need to. I did, but I didn't need to.
To your point, it's not about the phone calls. It's about the hustle in the store. I mean, it really is. And it's a skill of knowing how to talk to people and how to lead people to a decision and whatnot. Now, look, I ain't gonna lie, fish out of water trying to sell fucking brass instruments. That was terrible. I hated that. It was like,
that was my favorite, man, because you were
damn good at it.
You're selling to the mom. Well, you were selling to the parents that had the money in their pocket already. Like,
that's true.
They didn't know the easiest thing about. I will tell you this, and I'm sorry. And again, I feel like
go right ahead, bro.
The thing, in all of the years that I've done this, I've only ever worked in stores where you had to work every department. I worked at a store that had departments, but I was the manager, so I went to every department. The easiest sales I ever made was in band and orchestra. If you are listening to this and you're currently in music retail and you're not in your band and orchestra department, find a way to get to it, because I'm telling you, it is the easiest way to make sales. You're selling to people. It's kind of like you're selling meat to people who don't know anything about food. Like, they know they need it. You know what I mean? And like, it's expensive, so it must be good. And like, I Googled an article on it, so therefore it must be the right thing. And all you need to do is just validate, like, yeah, that's the right thing.
Yeah,
that's what you need.
That's very, very fucking well put. And also in the chat, Brent says, if you don't update your business models as customers change habits, you don't have a successful business. Thank you. That is correct. And I will say that both companies were guilty of not changing habits. I mean, they really were. Now, talking about sales, let's talk about sales. Okay, let's give some inner working stuff here for people who haven't shopped. Now, I know at KSM, it was visible, but not like at GC. The whole GC model was, Adam, are you familiar with green screen? Have you heard what green? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I've heard the horrors of green
screen. If you could navigate it, was like just a wonderful tool. But to you guys out there, I mean, not trying to give out trade secrets, but hey, there's inflation, money's tight. Let's talk, okay? So at Guitar Center, it was the first place I ever worked in my entire career where at the bottom right hand part of the screen, you could see the store's sales for the day and your profit for the day.
Yeah.
And you learn some amazing things when you start being able to see these numbers in this business. And the one thing about Guitar Center that was great, and Trent, you know this, the employee discount was the bomb. It was awesome. I mean, we even got at 762, for a while, we were able to buy used gear at what we paid for it.
Yeah, that went on for a while, but to what you were saying, that green screen system, if you got to learn it, yeah, it was very insightful.
Very. So what happens is, especially back in those days when people are, we had a statement that we used at GC that some sales guys, if they weren't able to close the deal, they would quote unquote drop their pants. And what that meant was they could see in real time what the cost was on the instrument they were selling, what the price was, the GLP, guaranteed lowest price or whatever. And then they get to decide how much they're going to drop that to make the sell. Now, the one thing I will say about GC at that point in time, because it was banging, was there was a lot more anonymity. You did not have to make a phone call like you did at the competition to make a deal. There was a statement that every Saturday J-Bell would say, Ted is in the building. And what Ted meant was take every deal. And that's why we did the business that we did. Yeah, there were some guys who couldn't sell very well and that would like drop it down to like, God, like just a hair above cost.
Yeah.
But you know, there were guys that, you know, perceived value is a big thing. And Adam, you know all about perceived value and trying to sell, you know, this merchandise. And I remember one time getting yelled at. Well, not yelled at. J-Bell pulls me into the office and he's like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what? He's like, your gross margin is too high. Now, coming from where I came from, walking into this business, I'm thinking, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Why are you telling me my gross margin is awful?
You're walking deals,
exactly.
Steve.
That's what he said.
Deals.
But he realized soon thereafter that that wasn't the case because I figured something out. I figured out, Trent, you remember how we cost average strings into the guitar?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're
I carried with me for years. Dude.
Yeah. So when you're throwing in strings or whatnot, you cost average it into the thing. So, and it doesn't really affect the margin. So for all you people out there that shop this stuff, just know if it's made of wood, if you push hard enough, you can get a deal. If it's electronic, you're shit out of luck.
But you got to, I will say that you got to be, go ahead.
One thing. So that culture of take every deal, you know, when it really was about pushing the sales as hard as you possibly could. And you did have leeway on making deals where regular sales guys could, you know, work out deals with customers on stuff. And you'd pretty much always get it approved. I mean, there wasn't too many times your manager would be like, no.
When did it change?
So I took over in Peoria, I was a salesperson and then an assistant manager. And then at the time, the position was sales and training manager. So I did that in Peoria for a little bit. And then I got moved to Milwaukee for that same position, which eventually ended up becoming customer service manager.
Oh, they changed STM to customer service?
Yes, dude.
Ooh.
And that was about the time when everything started changing because they had already started stamping out the wheeling and dealing culture, right?
Right.
And the old school Guitar Center customers were used to that. They were used to that shopping experience, to being able to come in and be like, no, come on. I know you can give me a better deal than that. I know you can get. And we got put into a position where when people were doing that, we would have to escalate it to either me, the customer service manager, or the store manager, which became really awkward for the customers.
Well, how many of those did you turn down though? Like, I mean, we're like on the average.
We would walk deals.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. And it was just because like they started a big push on the margin, right? And so this was also about the time they started really messing with the commission structures and how the salespeople were getting paid, right?
Right.
So it changed to where like
I remember when this happened. By the way,
I can't remember if they got rid of because you got a percentage of sales and a percentage of margin
Hey, hold up a sec, Trent. I think I know where you're going, Adam. I'm assuming you got an influx of applications.
We got an influx of insta hires is
Aha.
what we
Okay,
got.
continue, Trent.
So that's when they really started pushing on that, and then the commission structures changed. And I mean, I haven't been with Guitar Center for almost 6 years now, so you have to forgive me on some of this. I might not remember, but the commission structures changed. They sold it to everybody as a way for, oh, you can really make more money with it this way, and da 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 da. And that ended up not being the case for a lot of people.
If I'm not
Now,
mistaken, most
there were some
stores are
that it worked
strictly
great.
hourly now.
Well, eventually, that was the shift.
Right.
Was to we're getting rid of commission. Now all this change is taking place as I'm a customer service manager, and I'm training to be a store manager, right? But Steve, I came up, you know, a while back, really in the culture of that company. It was a while back, it was a different culture.
Right.
So I had the whole time this idea in my head of what it was going to be like to be a store manager, right? I came up with very proactive store managers. Like J Bell was always on the floor.
Yes, he
always,
was.
you know what I mean? He was very proactive. He would help, he knew I was new. If he knew I needed help with something, if he knew maybe I was dealing with a customer that he knew was difficult, like he would come in and he would help me out.
Yes, he would.
And he was very proactive in training. Like that's one thing that like I feel like my training prepared me to better be a salesperson than what I feel like we were training people toward the end of my career was to be cashiers that maybe knew a little bit. They weren't
Clerks.
they weren't as focused on the gear knowledge as what it was when I came up.
I will say, and Trent, I think you'll agree with me, the certification program was great.
Dude, it was awesome.
That was top tier.
And that ended up morphing into something that became really great as a training tool. Like there was cool modules on the computer you could do. Like there was always gear modules coming out for all the new gear where they were like little videos from the manufacturer and like telling you about like that ended up becoming, that was something they did that, yeah, it was great. Like that kind of thing was fantastic. But as it shifted from such a focus on sales, you started losing all those OGs, the vets that were the guys that had the guys that really were the backbone of the store's sales.
Yeah, because at that point, your top salespeople were taking a pay cut.
Yes.
What that's I wasn't even in Guitar Center, and I knew that's what was happening. They were trying to beef up the low producers to keep them, to lower the turnover, and they were at the expense of the top producers,
i.e. Cheney Brandon.
i.e. Cheney Brandon, Rob Wodarczyk. I mean, I gotta listen. I'm sure, I don't know who wants to be named or anything like that, but let's just say that there was a lot of folks that the locals gained by virtue of that commission, that change. And I wasn't even working there, and I remember hearing about that.
There's something that was mentioned here that I think carries over, and you heard me say this when I was working with you, Adam, is if you can't tech it, you shouldn't sell it, right? And that strictly came from, you were not allowed to sell out of certain departments at GC until you hit a certain level of certification and you knew what you needed to know. And that is one thing that at that point in time, GC was doing fantastic. And these black shirts, I have so many of these because I had to go through it all, right? And what would happen is every time you got quote unquote certified, they send you a shirt and they sent you a lanyard, right? But the key was, if you did not hit a certain level on these things, basically if you didn't get all A's, you weren't allowed to go to Pro Audio and sell. You weren't allowed to sell out of drums. You weren't allowed to sell, you know, if you were in pro audio, you couldn't sell a guitar. That was the way it was. And
those were not easy either.
no, that shit was fucking hard, man. When you got into pro audio,
yeah.
I took one of those, and it was not as I was a pro audio guy, and it was not.
No, it's not. And that was the thing that disturbed me about our location, Adam, was you've got somebody who's trying to run over everybody and sell everything under the fucking sun, but if they called and asked that person for guidance, they'd have to turn it over to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean that's and that's the I don't want to say the struggle. It is the struggle. It's the struggle when you work in a smaller operation. It's the struggle, and when I say smaller, I mean you're still talking about at the time I was working there, $15 million a year operation. It wasn't like a mom and pop shop necessarily, but when you the whole premise of the idea, the whole premise of that is that owners and managers have less people to manage, less people to pay. So, and if it's not broken in their eyes, why would you fix it? This person is selling at a good clip. Who cares, whatever else? Who cares what bodies are left in the wake?
But
as long as
they're doing it. That if a phone call went up the chain saying that this person, after they sold something and there was a negative response to them reaching out to this person for any kind of support, all of a sudden that flips a little bit, right?
Yeah, but Steve, I think that, like, what does it really equate to? It equates to
exactly.
They roll their eyes and they say, oh, here's Johnny Do-Gooder, who's selling guitars, but they're a band and orchestra person, and they took a return on a guitar because it was out of tune, or they sold a guitar with a broken headstock and they didn't know. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where when the person who signs the checks, when the person who is their name is on the door, so
Correct.
to speak, right? Mr. Guitar Center wasn't rolling through, but like in our case, the guy who signed the checks, he could show up at any moment. Time. When you have that dynamic, there's a lot of eye rolling. There's a lot of like, okay, well, this person, the leash is very long. If you can sell, if you are producing for the company, and this is true in corporate, world too. I mean, I'm sure Trent and you can talk all day about people who got away with probably everything leading up to actual murder in stores, and because they produced, because they sold. I mean, I've watched people, I watched an employee lie to me. I was supposedly the preeminent store manager in the company. I watched an employee lie and scream and throw things at me in front of ownership. And they weren't going to do anything because this person was a top producer. It's, if you're bringing in dollars, the sacrificial lamb is everyone else.
Correct. And we'll touch on this subject a little bit later, but to your point, when something gets returned and they neg you with return and they take a sale. But for some positive stuff, Irish says, you guys worked in a place where you have common interests with coworkers. Did that feel much different to other retail where there isn't a common interest? Yes. I would say the most positive thing about all of our experiences, period. It doesn't matter if it went sour or if you didn't leave on the terms you wanted to or anything like that. The one thing I think we all have in common here, and you guys can correct me, is it was an absolute joy to work in a building with people who had the same passion for the things that you did. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
it gives everyone something to talk about. It gives everything. If the conversation ever gets weird or political or something, it always gives you something to circle back to. And that is so important when you spend more time with these people than you do your own family. Like, yeah, you can't you can't all be there. You know, nobody grows up wants to sling gear, and nobody wants to grow up and sell pots. You know what I mean? But if you're going to sell something that you like, you know, in this case, guitars, drums, music equipment, it's kind of the best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, would you both not agree that when times are good, because look, all businesses go through ups and downs. All right, that just happens. But when times are good and you're working, and I think it's kind of specific to musicians. The only other place I could see it being similar is like if you're a crafter and you work for like Joann's, Michaels, or Hobby Lobby. That's the only thing I really can
Sure.
kind of equate it to.
Yeah.
There's a magic about working around the things you love. And, you know, I've said this before on different episodes, you know, you find yourself in a headspace where everybody else in any kind of selling business, retail or whatnot, dreads truck day. But if you're in this business and this is what you're passionate about, truck days are like Christmas. It's like, what new cool shit are we getting? And it's really hard to convey that to people. People just really don't understand unless they've been in it. And, you know, like, it's kind of appropriate. We're doing this right now, and it's NAMM.
Oh,
NAMM.
yeah.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
it's NAMM.
Yeah, NAMM's
Wow.
going on right now in LA. And, you know, there's that like ooh ah tingling feeling when you're sitting at a computer at your job looking at the NAMM feed to see what's coming and wondering if the boss is going to bring it in the store because it's cool and you want to try it out. And the one thing I give Guitar Center credit a lot of credit for was, when did they Gain? Trent, when did they get rid of Gain?
Dude, I think even when I let go, Gain was still a thing, to be honest with you.
Right. All right. Adam, are you familiar what Gain was for GC? All right.
No.
Gain was a program for employees that, you know, you could go in and look, and it was kind of like a marketplace. Basically what it was is it was deep discount deals on new gear that was coming out. Okay. And what would happen is the whole concept was, if a Guitar Center employee got this super stellar deal on something, and we're talking like some of these deals were below what you would get as an employee discount. Okay. I mean, like really, really good deals.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
with the point of, you get this merchandise, you're excited about this merchandise, and the payoff is you go sell that merchandise. That is something that GC did that was absolutely amazing. Now, look, I know Behringer is a very touchy subject with a lot of people. Okay. But when Behringer released their first set of studio monitors that had ribbon tweeters in them, knocking off the atoms, I got a pair of those, and they were they were 8-inch speakers. I got a pair of those for $100. At retail, they were like almost $200 a piece. That's what GC had there for a while to get people excited about this stuff. And you know, to your point, Adam, I know where your head would kind of, it was a big corporation. They had the power to be able to do that. Okay. They had the financing and they had the agreements and whatnot.
500 stores to 5 is
exactly.
a ratio.
So that's not lost on me. But if you have a company, and that's the sad thing about Guitar Center, look, we can say whatever we want to about competition. Guitar Center has just kind of like fallen off for quite a while. And, you know, they went through bankruptcy and they kind of came out of it. And I'm just going to go on record say here, the GC here locally is awful. I would only go there to get strings, to be honest with you. So
I've abandoned one here in Peoria for, man, a long time.
Have you been in the one up there, Adam?
Man, I haven't been, not since I moved back. I think the last time I was in that store was maybe 7 years ago, something like that. But Delaware's tax free, so it remains pretty busy. But it's a yeah. I haven't
So
been there
you
in a
so
long
you
time.
moved back to Delaware, correct?
Yeah.
So how many do you have Sam Ash there at all?
No, the nearest Sam Ash to me is a hour
Wow.
plus in Plymouth
Well,
Meeting.
Sam Ash was nothing in the Atlanta market. That was garbage.
Oh yeah, I know that. I will say this: of all the music stores I've been to, the Sam Ash and I don't know anybody that works there anymore, so I don't feel bad saying this, was the most disgusting retail establishment. Like
Was
from a
it not?
cleanliness standpoint, I had ever
It was
been.
always awful. It's been like that for like a decade, Adam. That store was nasty as shit.
I had scouted that store. I mean, so many times, and I got to
Well,
tell you, I don't know how anyone let that slide. I don't know how
oh,
anyone let that
you
slide.
mentioned something that as a store manager and even as a customer service manager, but scouting the competition,
Ooh.
that was a whole thing too.
Well, what kind of
Yeah,
what
that was
what kind of competition did you have in Peoria?
A very well established mom and pop shop,
Right.
Florida Music. That
what was the name of it?
Florey's Music.
Where?
It's in Peoria, Illinois.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the name of it?
Oh,
Sorry.
Florey's Music.
Okay.
Flores.
All right.
Flores. What? Oh, but
Mhm.
they've been here, 50 plus years, right? And they carry things that the inventory system changed at one point to where you used to, like Steve said, you'd be like, oh, you talk to your store manager, hey, can we get this piece of gear in so we can try it and da 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 da. And you used to be able, there was a point where you could just kind of request gear
Yep.
and you could get it to your store. But there came a point when that stopped and this new inventory system rolled out. And it really downsized a lot of what I was in Peoria, a smaller market. I was in Des Moines, which a medium-sized market, but we weren't carrying the cool high-end pieces that people were excited about. You know what I mean? Like Guitar Center didn't carry Mesa Boogie amps. When I was with them, or
but
I'm sorry, did carry them, but they were only allocated. It got to a point where they were only allocated to very specific stores,
right.
in large markets, pretty much only exclusively. So like a small store like Peoria, there was no way we could get. It got to a point where there was no way where we could get like a cool dual rectifier half stack, even like the head and a 212 cab.
Oh,
Do you
remember my full stack wall?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was dope. Anyway, continue.
But the competition, however, they carried all the cool Mesa Boogie shit. They had all the cool Ibanez Prestige guitars. They had PRS guitars. Like they carried everything that we couldn't carry. Stuff that we couldn't even get if we wanted to. That they just wouldn't come to our
That
store.
was the strategy with some of those brands, though, is that they would go, like, they saw what GC did to Fender, and then started to kind of put their fingers into some of the indie stores.
Like Mesa Boogie had a deal where there could only be one dealer, or like so many dealers
per county.
Yep.
So like Flores had the Mesa Boogie dealerships. There was no way that we could get it.
To your point, Adam, you're 100% right. You're going down the debt train there. Yes, we know what GC did to Fender. All right. And I mean, look, you say what you want to about the gear, but how bad does it look that at some point in time, Behringer says, you're not selling our shit? Think about that for a minute, and now, if I'm not mistaken, now there's no PRS, there's no Mesa, Um, the local GC here, I mean, half the guitar wall is empty. Okay, and
So
go ahead, Trent.
it became so focused on proprietary gear. Like there became a point
Laguna.
late in the time when Laguna is what started it. But then it was Harbinger
Mm-hmm.
for pro
Oh
equipment,
God.
right?
Yeah.
And then there was Mitchell guitars,
No,
which
Mitchell predated Laguna. Mitchell had always been a GC brand.
Right.
well, they had never got.
Well, and they weren't the only one. No, to Trent's point, they weren't the only ones too, because then you had Carlo Rebelli was Ash's
Mhm.
brand. You had
Everybody kind of
you
had
know,
their own thing.
right? They did. They had
But-
everybody had in band and orchestra. John Baptiste was the big thing for
Yeah.
Smash.
No, like later in the later points of my career, like when we'd be having the big sales of the year, like the Memorial Day sale was always a real big one. Labor Day sale was
Labor
always
Day,
a real
yeah.
big one. You know what I mean? Black Friday, like all those deals for those sales, customers might get a 10 or 15% off coupon if they're lucky, or the deals are on
Private label shit.
quite frankly, the shitty proprietary gear.
Right, private label. Cause GC bought Simmons, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so you had Simmons,
Yeah, those Simmons.
You had
Simmons drum kits.
Mitchell.
They had an acoustic. They had an
Acoustic?
drum kit too.
Oh,
So-
I've got the best one, Trent. I got the best one. You ready? When they tried to revive fucking Delta Labs.
Oh yeah, with the effects pedals, those were terrible.
Although I will say their version of the Tube Screamer was a direct knockoff of the TS-808. I will say that.
Yeah, for the most part, most of that gear was pretty awful.
Raven amplifiers.
Raven amps. I got so many virtual drum set deals from people just going to play Simmons drums. Like they would just go. They would come into the shop. Oh, why is this Roland so expensive? I can get a Simmons. Go ahead. See you in 28 days when you return it to Guitar Center and come back and get
all
the
right.
Roland.
So there's a couple of questions in the chat that I think we all would love to address. So let me get these out of the way real quick. All right. So Irish Connection. Just curious. I know nothing about music retail. What kind of money do people drop there? Was a few hundred a normal sale, or are most sales strings and plugs? Boy, do we have a story for you. And then Brent asked, what kind of quality did a private label guitar have versus a national brand? So who wants to take question number one from Irish?
Well, okay.
I'll take.
What was it again?
Just curious, what kind of money do people drop there?
Oh,
These are fishing
Oh,
stories.
I'll let
right?
Adam do. Let Adam do this one because he's got brass, and he's when you get into band instruments, that's next level.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So think of it this way: if you have during what we call rental season. Now in Georgia, this was like August sometime. So what we would do is your average horn. So your horns are broken into three tiers. Your instruments, right? Your saxophones, trumpets, trombones, things like that. Your middle schoolers are going to rent. That's fine. Whatever. No big deal, right? Your high schoolers. I mean, it was like I think somebody said in the chat, it's like fish in a barrel. The band directors tell the kids they have to get these things. They say, you're a good player now. You have to get X, Y, and Z. And the parents come into the store like this is their homework. Like I got to get this thing. You know what I mean? It's like the new backpack. I know for a fact I had twin sisters that were juniors in high school, both music major bound. One was a saxophone player, one was a French horn player. And so, and I say this for Irish Connection, like this wasn't like something that people came in and said, I want to buy a nice horn because I feel like it. This was like they were told they had to do it. That was 10,000 out the door. And so you figure if I'm selling on an average August or so, a normal, month for me, if I could get my whole team around $10,000 to $15,000 a month, that was great. If I sold less than 45 to 60,000 just in that month, that was a disappointment.
Think of
So if you're in the right place, I was in the right store for that. I would go from, I would have a fraction of the inventory. Steve, you remember my entire store was, I don't know, 35, maybe 2,500 square feet.
not selling space, but yeah.
Right, not selling space. I would go from out of like 60 salespeople, I would go from about 20 to 25 on my best month. 11 months of the year during August, I would easily go to number 1, 2, or 3. So in terms of the money people drop, depending on what you want, guitars, a few $100, I'm feeling pretty good about that. But when you got into the band and orchestra, I mean, yeah, if you let someone walk for less than 2,500, you missed an opportunity.
Yeah, Irish. It's big. The business is big money, and even from a guitar standpoint, if you're in a guitar-driven market, I will tell you, in my heyday when Guitar Center was going on with Guitar Hero, when all that was done, it was not uncommon. And Trent, I think you will confirm, it was not uncommon to sell a couple of $1,000 guitars a day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, it was crazy.
Lenny, Steve.
Oh, Lenny. Oh, yeah. Let me tell the story. All right. So if you're a musician and you do watch this, this was some of the cool stuff that Guitar Center did. Guitar Center, for one, owns a lot of iconic guitars. So do they own Lenny and they gave it out to Fender to reproduce? Is that correct, Trent?
Yes, I think they bought it off of his wife.
Right. They own Lenny. They own the SRV #1. They own
Blackie.
They own Blackie from Eric Clapton. So Guitar Center's sitting on these iconic guitars from all kinds of music. They own this shit. So the coolest,
like Jimmy Page's #2 Les Paul or something like that.
Yeah, and the coolest thing that ever fucking happened was Fender did a run of Stevie Ray Vaughan's Lenny guitar reproductions, and
the SRVs.
And what happened was the Fender rep came around to the stores with the real Lenny. And now, if you're a guitar player worth your salt and you know who the fuck Stevie Ray Vaughan is, and they bring you this guitar, and I got to sit down and play Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar. Yeah, that is some of the cool things.
When that happened too, I got to play it too, and it was just like that. Still to this day, 14 years later, like it's still something I'll never ever forget.
Right,
I got to play Stevie Ray Vaughan's guitar,
and that's what's amazing about this business. Okay, what we're gonna do is we wind this down. I don't really want to get into the bad of it because look, we've all had a good time in this business. All right. There's a lot of fun stuff and a lot of things that all of us have got to do that probably people would have never thought we were able to do. So, what I want to do is we'll start with you, Adam, and I want you to talk about like people you've met that maybe were your heroes or idols or whatnot that you thought you never would through the business, or things you got to do through the business that you never thought you would. Same thing with you, Trent, and then, we'll go to me. So Adam, you're up first.
I think probably for me, I didn't have a lot of, I got to meet Victor Wooten once, so that was cool. Super nice guy. But to be honest with you, I think the biggest things that I took away in terms of just, things that I remember fondly, probably when, I would say when the stores that I was running were running at their best, like that was always kind of inspiring to me in its own way. Not to get too cheeseball with it, but it's true. Like when you could show up to work, and I mean, you could literally have. I mean, we could just have a hand signal across the store, and that's when we knew, okay, you're going to lunch. You know what I mean? Or like, hey, the truck is here, and you knew you had it on. You knew how the process was going to go. You knew not only what was going to come off the truck, how it was going to get done, how you were going to have it done, and how everyone understood what the next steps were. Not because you beat them into submission and into doing it, is because you all liked to do it. That was the next step. So I had a couple of, I unfortunately had a lot more bad managers than good managers in my time, but I did meet some really cool managers in my time. I did meet some really cool people. But for me, when the team was running at its best, that was what I found most inspiring when I was in the industry. When everybody just knew what had to get done, but we never we never got rid of the vibes. If vibes were a thing in like 2015, then
You're right.
then we had
Yep.
it ahead. Yep.
All right. So people I met, stuff like that.
Well, people you've met, things that you got to do because of the business, things that made you proud as a manager. Hold on, Yards.
Oh boy. So I'll start with just a list of musicians that I've met. Alice Cooper was super cool. Total grandpa vibes. Dave Mustain was actually a really, really awesome guy to talk to. A lot of people say he's good, kind of a dick or whatever, but when I met him, dude was super cool. I think the only one that got to sit down and have an actual conversation with him, which for me, I've always been into metal. I've been listening to Megadeth since I was 12 or 13.
Right.
It was really hard for me not to just totally geek out and fanboy, dude. But I held it together and had a pretty cool conversation with him, dude. That was awesome. I've sold strings and picks and stuff to Fred Durst and Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit. Ben, whatever his last name is, the singer from Breaking Benjamin in Des Moines, came into my store and bought stuff.
Burnley, I think his name is. Ben
Burnley. Burnley?
Something like that.
I mean, I have a ton of musicians, and VIP, especially in Milwaukee, dude. Oh my God. I would get VIP to every show. We were always getting free tickets to shows, even down in Atlanta.
Yeah, we did.
Always getting free tickets to shows. Road crew would come in. You'd hook the road crew up, and then sometimes they get you on a VIP list, and you get to do some cool. You get to go hang out, do cool shit. That was the cool thing about working at Guitar Center. Guthrie Govan.
You got to meet him?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
One of his dudes came into the store, and I took care of him. This was in Milwaukee, and he was like, "Yeah, dude, Guthrie and his band, the Aristocrats, are playing out at this." Dude, it was a tiny venue. He was like,
"Awesome
do
show.
You want to come?" And I'm like, he's like, "Dude, I'll let you meet Guthrie." He's like, "We'll have some beers after the show and stuff, and you can actually meet him and talk to him." And I'm like, "Yeah."
Was that when Brian Ballard and Marco Gimmerman were playing with him? Yeah, that is an awesome
guitar
show.
player. That was a geek out moment. Really?
Ooh.
Yes, of course I want to go to that. So me and this Ryan dude that I ended up. He's still another guy that long-term friendship spawned from Guitar Center. Me and him went and seen Guthrie Govan and actually got to hang out with the dude for a couple hours after the show and just be normal people with somebody that you look up to it's awesome.
And you don't get that anywhere else.
No, Guitar Center was the only place that you were going to get that kind of experience. And that was one of the little side perks, about working there if you were in particular markets.
Correct. I do want to throw this out here real quick. Adam, did you hear about Randy Rand? He passed away.
No. Randy Rand.
Bass player autograph, Stone Mountain.
Oh,
yeah.
No way.
About a month ago.
I'll be damned.
And see,
Wow.
that right there kind of talks about what we're doing. Randy Rand was the bass player from the 80s band Autographed, and he worked for KSM and Stone Mountain, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. People don't understand, if you're really into this business, what it kind of opens up to you. All right. So here I am, a guy who plays guitar. I've worked retail my entire life. My wife is the one who says, go apply for Guitar Center. And the things that happen afterwards are just amazing. I wind up meeting one of my best friends, Matthew Thomas Head, who just recently won a BMI award for another score for a documentary. He's won an Emmy. I've recorded music with him. I became a studio rat. I got to go around and play with people and do all sorts of things that people in my regular normal life would have never thought could happen or told me that couldn't happen. We talk about bands and people you've met. You know, I was kind of a cowboy when I was at Guitar Center, and I reached out to some people. I never got in trouble for it, except one time, and that was with my hero, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I grew up and, you know, followed a lot of music and whatnot, and I wound up finding this band, Him, from Finland, right? I walked by Hot Topic, and I see this album cover, and I'm like, that looks kind of cool, and I go home and look them up, and I fall in love with the band, and my not knowing better ass emails their manager and says, hey, can the band come do a signing when they're in town? The answer was yes. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, this was one of probably my second favorite band of all time. My favorite band's Kiss. They're number 2. All right. And I've got onesies with their logo on it, signed by the band. I've got a guitar in a case signed by the band. I get to go eat at Blue Moon Pizza in Marietta, Adam, with Him. Yeah.
It's delicious.
I'm sitting there with this band that I completely idolize and love, and I'm eating pizza with them. We're talking about playing Halo, right? You know, next band, the 69 Eyes from Finland, same thing. Send an email, they come out, boom, done. You know, I when Him came, it was kind of funny because it was the Project Revolution tour where they were touring with Linkin Park and a bunch of different bands. And Jay Bell, the manager, was like, well, there won't be that many people here. And so we my wife and I rented a van personally, because this was like a big deal to me, right? So we rent this van, we go pick the band up at the hotel, and they come in, and I'm telling them, hey, look, if people bother you, let me know, you know, and these guys were so cool. They're like, anyone can come and talk to us. We don't care. We sold them about 8 to 10 grand worth of gear that night, which was cool. Cheney Brandon, of course, was involved in that. But, but I did sell a $3,000 Les Paul to the drummer. That was cool. But, so J Bell was like, there won't be this many people here. Trent, you were there for that, weren't you?
Yeah.
Do you remember the line around the fucking building?
It was a fucking madhouse.
It was. I printed out all the flyers and shit here personally.
J Bell, I don't think also, he didn't take into consideration that Jackass was huge at the time.
Right. And
Bam and them guys was always talking about Him. They had their music on Jackass all the time. And Jackass, this was like peak Jackass popularity.
Right.
So to a certain scene, Him was fucking huge.
Mm-hmm.
And that certain scene in Atlanta just like all found out about this in-store.
Right. And I couldn't have done that with KSM, right? I couldn't have done that. But I just sent an email. Yeah. And when I realized what the out-of-pocket expense was going to be, I just bid it. But J Bell did pay me back for it. You know, there was a store paid out. But
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I had the band. We were getting ready to go eat, and there was like hardly nobody there. And J-Bell's like, nobody's going to show up. And we get back, and there's this line wrapped around Guitar Center Marietta 762, like thousands of people. And but yeah, I mean, this business, if you're able to get into it and you're able to find a location that, I mean, really and truly, I'm not lying here. The business has to be good. If you go into a store that the business is failing, it's not going to be fun. Would you not? Would you guys not agree?
Absolutely.
Right. If you go into
Yeah.
one where it even if it's treading water, even if it's a little bit above, okay, there's so many things that you can do that will completely change your perception of working. All right. And
Look, it's the closest thing to living the rock star lifestyle without being a rock star.
you're right.
Like that's what it felt like at the good, really good times. It was like living the rock star lifestyle, just without being the rock. I mean, without being the rock star.
Right. And I will say this. I mean, I went trying to chase lightning in a bottle. I mean, I was lucky enough to work at Guitar Center at a wonderful time. Okay, I really was. And I was dissatisfied in the job that I had, and I was made an offer from the competition, and I uprooted my family and moved them to Atlanta to go work for it. And look, I'm not going to fault them for it. It's a different world. It's a different business now. Okay, it's not the same. And I thought that maybe there'd be a glimpse of that, and there wasn't. And that was a mistake I made on my part. You know, Adam, I'm not gonna lie to you. I took almost a $40,000 pay cut to take that fucking job. All right, and no,
No, I don't.
but at the same
Yeah.
time, you know, you live, you learn. I mean, it just, and it took me doing that to realize that the era of when music instrument retail was great is over. And, you know, and I hate to say this, and I hate to pin the tail on the donkey that is KSM. All right. They made me want to never work in the business ever again. They really did.
Well, I mean, they literally did that to me. I'm not. I'm out of the industry, and I won't be going
Look,
back.
Guitar
And-
Center did the same thing to me.
Yes.
Like,
And
after
in your
everything-
situation, Trent, was awful.
after everything that I went through with once I started moving around, you know, I was promised a huge pay increase to go up to Milwaukee and be the customer service manager there. But the thing was, in Peoria, we were killing it. I mean, absolutely killing it. Like top 10 in the chain, killing it. And I was killing it on my bonuses. Because, you know, I got bonuses for being a sales manager. I was killing it on my bonuses. Oh, I went up to Milwaukee and ended up taking a huge pay cut. Like,
Mhm.
detrimental.
Well, you know that.
Put me under so much like stress and anxiety
Yeah.
from like worrying about financial bullshit. But eventually we did turn that store around to where like I was making my bonuses and things got better.
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean,
things did.
here's the point about this business. The moment it doesn't become fun anymore, you got to go.
Look,
Because this business has to be fun.
I can tell you an exact moment, an exact instance that sticks out in my head that made it instantly go from I love my job to what the fuck am I doing here? Was we had this is when I was a store manager in Des Moines. And look, I'm going to tell you, when I came into that store, it was a wreck.
Mhm.
I mean, physically, merchandising wise, cleanliness wise, it was a wreck.
Well, you
The
learned
crew-
from the best, so you were well
crew
prepared.
was an absolute mess. And I was warned beforehand that this was how it's going to be. I just didn't imagine that it would be like it was. And so it was a fucking nightmare. my life from that point on became a fucking retail nightmare, dude, because I was living there. Because
Yep.
I had to literally turn damn near the whole staff over and rehire and retrain an entire new crew. And I had to make a kid who had no experience in anything like this be my customer service manager. So I had to hold him by a leash forever, which that's not his fault. He didn't know anything. But I got thrust into a position where I felt like it was single handedly on me to
Yep.
make sure all these people were trained and that my store was running fluidly and that everybody was having a good time. The vibe thing always stuck around. We were always concerned about whether the staff was having a good time. But there was a particular moment when we had a new district manager come in. He had seen me, helping train some new hires. Like, I'm sitting down with them, going over gear with them, and just kind of going through stuff. And he pulls me aside and he goes, "Hey, man, you're being way too hands on with this training." And I just kind of looked at him like, excuse me? I don't
Wow.
understand what you mean by that. And he's like, "That's your customer service manager's job, not yours. You're the store manager. Your job is to oversee."
Oh, that's bullshit.
And I was like, I was so taken aback by that because that's not what I had prepared myself for mentally.
Well,
All the years of being in sales and being a frontline salesperson and then taking the assistant man, I mean, working completely through the hierarchy, going through basically being an ops manager for 6 months. I mean, the whole entire hierarchy of the business I went through. And it was like that one single thing instantly made me start questioning, what the fuck am I doing here? This is not what I wanted. This is not what I was prepared for. And then, I ended up getting thrown under the bus for some shit that, I'll be honest with you, I did. And I knew that it was something I wasn't supposed to do, but I'd seen other people do it before, and district managers knew about it. I didn't fucking think nothing of it. I had let somebody stay with me who became homeless for a short period of time. I let the motherfucker crash on my couch so he wasn't sleeping in his car in the middle of fucking winter.
Wait a minute, and you got canned for that shit?
Because I let him stay with me.
You got hold up. You got canned from GC because you let a homeless employee crash on your couch?
I violated the conflict of interest rules.
Motherfucker. See, here's the thing.
I was not given any warning. Dude, one day the loss prevention manager just shows up to the store. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Well, I came to talk to you." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And he just starts grilling me. And I'm like, "Hold up. Stop.
All right.
What is going on here?"
Time out. I need a timeout here. All right. So we're going retail war zone, like for real here. So let me get this straight. You had an employee that worked for you that was homeless that you let crash on your fucking couch, and they let you go for that?
It ended up being for like 3 or 4 weeks that he stayed with me. And like, we had rode into work together sometimes and shit. I never fucking thought nothing of it, dude. And then like all of a sudden, yeah, dude, I got like completely thrown under the bus for it. And like the new district manager that come in I had even known it. And when this new district manager came in and immediately got rid of like 2 or 3 store managers in our district, I knew it.
Look, I'm kind of pissed off because that's some bullshit.
My years of being in that company, I have seen the cycle, right? New district manager comes in, all of a sudden your store managers change.
Yeah, they want their own people.
Comes in, all of a sudden your staff changes, whether it's your manager staff changing or whether it's your whole staff changing. Like new managers come in, and there's always shakeups, right? So this dude came into our district and immediately let there's like 3 or 4 managers go. Like immediately. And I remember coming home and telling my fiance at the time, they're gonna fire me. They're gonna find some stupid reason to let me go. And she's like, no way, dude, you've been doing this forever. We've moved all over the place. Like, you've improved every store you went to. Which I did, dude. I was good at that job. I was good at it. I was good at training people. I was enthusiastic about it. I had a real passion for it. I genuinely was able to say that I loved what I did, right? And they ruined that shit.
I remember when you messaged me that you got let go.
They ruined that one instance of him telling me that I was being too hands-on. Ruined 9 years of absolute loving what I did.
Look, here's the thing. And I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I've been let go for it. And then get this, dude, after I got let go, they fought me on my unemployment. The maximum amount was 3 times. I had my initial hearing, and then they challenged it 3 times.
Did you get it?
Hell yeah, I did.
All right. So see that point right there. You got it. So is that why they terminated you? Because you had a homeless employee on your couch?
It was a violation of the conflict of interest.
Oh my God, that is so much bullshit. Let me tell you.
I am a key holding manager, and he was staying in my house, and at any point in time, he could have taken my keys and went to the store.
At any point in time, your district manager could fuck off. Look, that kind of shit pisses me off. All right.
Yeah, I thought you and I had been through that.
Still, it's been a long time, obviously. When did they let you go?
Shit, that was 2017.
Dude, I'm old. It's 2022. I'm not going to remember.
5 years, man. I mean,
yeah, but that's some bullshit. And when, look, there's a lot of things that have happened in my career through the years that as I started this podcast and I've learned more about labor law and things that they can and can't do, that, I mean, hindsight's 2020. But man, that's some bullshit.
Man,
that's some bullshit.
Up until right around the time that I became a store manager, and I even liked being a store manager once I got my store going and got a good crew. You know what I mean? And like the vibe. In the
time out. Real quick question. Hero asked, did they fire the person that was sleeping on your couch too?
No.
What the fuck?
He walked out and quit when he found out they fired me.
Oh my God.
And actually, like 3 other people walked out of the store with me that day too.
Oh, that is so terrible. Adam, I'm going to be honest with you, Adam. Hold up a second. Adam, in your situation, I don't think that would have happened to you. I will say that. I mean, I know they're different companies, but I do not think that would have happened to you.
No.
Absolutely not.
The corporate structure became slimy. And when I say the corporate structure, I'm talking like the district managers, the regionals, the loss preventions, you know, and et cetera.
Did you have Hinky? Well, no, Hinky was gone at that point. Never mind.
No, dude, I had some really, really awesome district managers over the years. Like most of them were fucking awesome ass dudes. Man, that last one, he came actually from Atlanta.
Oh, was that the guy that came from 761?
Jeremy.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy. Never mind. We will not go any further there. I understand now.
Yeah, and me and him, dude, like, I could tell right away. As soon as he came in the district,
he was younger than you, wasn't he?
We didn't vibe. We didn't vibe like me and the previous dude did.
Oh, time out. He was younger than you, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he was. But anyway, continue.
I could just tell, like, you know, and like I said, like, I kind of knew that it was a rule that you didn't have somebody stay with you, but like it wasn't permanent, so I didn't think it was a big deal.
You're helping somebody out at that point. There's a difference than having a roommate and having somebody you're letting crash on your fucking couch.
I didn't care about that. Well, that's what they were trying to say, that we were roommates. And
They were your DM was looking for a reason to get rid of you, is what that was.
Absolutely. And like I said, like, I knew that right when he came in, and I mean, he was I can imagine that he was probably told when he got promoted, hey, you need to trim some fat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would almost guarantee that he was told that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, in hindsight, like, I don't fault dude for it, because he was probably just doing what he was told, doing what he thought was right. Whatever.
And that's good. That's a good way to be. That's a great attitude to have.
Like, when you get into a position like that, dude, with a company like that, like, I hate to throw the term around, but like, you really do become a yes man.
Yeah, you do.
You become a yes man to that corporate structure. And like, being a store manager even almost started getting to that, like, to where it was just really administrative and not hanging out in the store, vibing with people, helping train people, like passing on gear knowledge, like having fun with customers. Like, it's not what it was about, man.
No, it wasn't. So
it was overseer.
Real quick, we're sitting at an hour and a half. There's something I want to throw out here, and Adam, you can say yes or no. All right, and we'll move on from it. Being laid off.
Is that a question?
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Your call.
In terms of like what do I want to talk about it? Yeah.
Okay. So I want to throw this out here. Okay. Look, I understand cultures are different, and I understand times have changed in this business, and I get that. And that's a miscalculation on my part. I'm not going to blame people for a misfit, so to speak. Okay. I did trust people, and I moved my entire family from one state to another for a job, and only to find out that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And that's different. All right. So we'll that's another story for another time. Okay. However, let's talk about the pandemic, and let's talk about businesses laying people off. And are we okay talking about PPP loans? Okay. All right. So
this could get
all right. Here we go. So the company that Adam and I worked for got not one, but two forgivable loans, payroll protection program loans, right? To keep people employed. Now, I was not upset the day I got the phone call or the day that the boss walked in and said, "Hey, we're shutting you down. We're laying you all off. Here's a piece of paper that says, hey, you can apply for unemployment, and hey, be on your way." Got no problem with that. All right. And they kept employed some quote unquote ride or die people. I'll never forget sitting in my friend's basement where I was living, right? We moved down there in December. I started the first week of December. We were staying in a friend's basement, 2 cats, 2 kids, my wife and myself. And then all of a sudden a pandemic breaks out. Nobody plans this. It's not like we moved to Atlanta and expected The Walking Dead to happen, okay? But I wasn't exactly in a good spot. And then when the pandemic hit, nobody's renting, it was a mess. So sure, I fully understood they were going to close this location down because it didn't do a lot of business. I mean, for what they were looking for, it made no business sense whatsoever to keep that location open. I was fine with that. I understood. But Adam is a guy who worked for the company for numerous years. He wrote the training manual for the new POS system. This is a guy who put in, and you've never told me this, I'm pretty sure that you put in a lot of personal time to get that shit done. And they laid this motherfucker off.
Oh my
and
God.
and I'm going to say this, that at that moment in time, there were some other indications that it wasn't the right fit. But when I see somebody like this guy who has done so much for that company, okay, put blood, sweat, tears, writing manuals for a new POS system, training stores, whole 9 yards, they laid him off. And
well, there's some layers.
I know there's some layers. I know
to
there's
it,
some
yeah.
layers. So I'm going to just leave it at that and let you tell the story.
Sure, it was the pandemic. It was the height of this was April of 2020, and so there's no vaccines. It's spreading like wildfire. It had come down to, at this point, the relationship between me and the owner was deteriorating, and we had a new GM that had just come down, also relocated, like Steve did, like I did, to work here. So we, basically the story, the day that the governor of Georgia was going to supposedly shut down or not shut down the state. I had a 3-year-old at the time. My wife has asthma, immunocompromised. This is when, for some perspective, right? This is when we thought you could pick it up from a counter. And so anyway, long story short, the day before the order comes, and nobody has told me anything. And I'm the manager of the flagship store. Nobody has told me if we're shutting down or not. But at this point, everyone had moved to either work from home or had already been laid off in Georgia. My wife worked for the justice system. She was work from home. So my kids' daycare shut down. At this point, it's kind of like decision time. Like, okay, are we going to shut down or are we not going to shut down? I spoke to my general manager, who was the vessel to the ownership. If we're going to stay open, I will take a voluntary layoff if we're going to stay open to the public, because I can't, in good conscience, be out here right now with everything that's going on. I'm not a super health conscious guy, but I was aware of what was going on. Well, I get my voluntary layoff. At that point, everything is going as I expected. I expected to get laid off. What had happened was, the next day, I agreed to take some phone calls while I was laid off to kind of help out with, because the new point of sale system that, I think I worked like 2.5 straight months, like 60 something odd days in a row to make sure it got, turned over and things of that nature. The day that we rolled it out was the week before we shut down. So of course, now we're all converted on this new system. Long story short, the people are calling me when I'm not working for them, the whole 9 yards. I found out that they were still staying open because one of the people called me, one of my assistants, who is not a technologically sound dude. This guy will tell you that. He's not a technologically sound dude. He calls me and tells me, "Oh, well, I'm working at the store. Where are you? Everybody wants to know where you are." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I was told we were laid off." I said, "Nope, we're working here. We're doing internet sales." News to me. Nobody ever told me. So they were using the manuals I wrote for the system that I rolled out to do the internet sales, and I was none the wiser. And so that's how I found out. So I called a week later. It was a tough time. So I was like, I need to work. I need to go back to work. So I call GM and I say, "Hey, I'd like to come back to work." He says, "Let me talk to the owner." Talks to the owner, comes back and says, "We can't take on your salary right now. I'm sorry. We can't afford to bring you back on. We're going to keep you laid off." The very first thing I hear when I get back is how they did record sales. So it was kind of a portrayal of trust, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, the layoff was, So yeah. So anyway, so the layoff was hard to swallow because yes, the training manual that they wrote for onboarders, I wrote that. This training manual that the 85-page training manual that for the new point of sale system, I wrote that too. It was frustrating, to say the least. And then the reward I got for coming back was I got exiled to a branch store to a branch store, we'll just say in the north of Georgia, and because again the relationship with ownership was deteriorating. So that's what I got for it.
They didn't even send you back to West Cobb.
No. They did, like, very, very briefly. Basically, I became the fixer. At one point, I was holding keys for 3 out of the 5 stores at the same time, where I would start my day in one store. At lunch, I would go to the second store, and then towards the end of the day, I would go back to the third store.
And see, here's the thing. I have a lot of respect for you, Adam. I think that you are a fantastic human being. I think that you are a great husband and a great parent. Okay. And
there's a but coming.
But that's ludicrous. And the reason I say that is because, number one, so let's say you're laid off and you're receiving all these phone calls. And like I said, I've learned a lot since I've started this podcast, and I didn't start this podcast till all that was over. Okay. So I didn't know then either. Right. You should have got paid for that shit. You're working off the clock. You're providing support for fucking free.
Right. Well, what it boiled down to is that the relationship with ownership had deteriorated so badly that, the fact that I basically advocated for myself, where I said, if you're not going to make a decision, then I'll make a decision. Because I advocated for myself, and then some other things that subsequently happened after that. It became about spite. They long story short, they laid me off because I made that decision. They refused to bring me back out of spite.
So, all right. So let me get the turn of events correct here. So you anticipated them doing the right thing and shutting all the stores down, correct? Mm-hmm. And you went ahead and said, okay, if you're going to do this, I'll take the layoff, correct?
Yeah, that was the last I heard was that it was going to shut down.
And so where the disintegration of the relationship came, was it because you wanted to take the layoff? Because everybody was doing it. They laid us all off and they got loans, Right. So I don't see how they can be mad at you because you did the right thing for you and your family.
Well, things were kind of going south before that, but that was probably the first nail in the coffin.
Wow.
Was when the layoff happened and I found out that, that was probably the first nail in the coffin for both of us, really, for me and for ownership.
And let me tell you, I'm going to say this on camera and live and whatnot. Adam is a great human being. He's a great store manager. He understands the business, and my God, he went above and beyond what his pay scale was just on AMZ alone. So
I had to leave the industry to really understand how low that pay scale
and you
was.
did. And so, Adam, tell us real quick, what are you doing now?
I am a software engineer.
How you like it?
It's a lot better.
And
it's a lot better. And they don't tell you how many of your, I will say this to anyone thinking about leaving the industry. They don't tell you the skills that you leave with, and they're very, very useful, outside of the industry.
Awesome. So also, Trent, I know that you're out of the business and you seem to love what you do. Tell everybody what you're doing now.
I'm an apprentice to be a union carpenter. And right now I am working on a heavy highway construction project that is building a new bridge over the Illinois River crossing from East Peoria to Peoria, Illinois. So it's a massive project. I mean, multiple year project. There's a long time left on it, man. We still got a lot of work to do, but I'm building a bridge, and it's not something I ever thought that
No,
I'd be doing one day. But dude, I love it.
I know you do.
I get to throw on a harness and climb around and climb up super high and buck on I-beams, and I weld all the time. I get to play with the cutting tools all the time.
I'm the opposite. I get to sit at home and build websites.
Here's the thing, Adam. I see all this shit that Trent's doing on Facebook. I'm like, I'd be fucking mortified. I could not do that shit.
Right. Well, you know, that's the thing though. If you stay, I feel like all of us, and Trent, I don't know how many years you have, but I know it's a lot. You spend enough years, and they kind of whip you into thinking you can't do anything else, but you really can. You really can. There is such a thing as folks that are too long in the tooth, or too, you know, they're so far down the rabbit hole that they don't want to climb out. But if you're in retail, you have transferable skills. They won't tell you that, but you have transferable skills.
I 100% agree with that. You absolutely have transferable skills that you would be surprised to realize how many things that come in useful for.
Right. If you've run a Saturday store meeting in your life, you can run a stand-up meet. I run stand-up meeting. I wrote on an ironic twist of fate. The one thing I did with Ken Stanton is I wrote training documents. I wrote the training document for the company I work for now, Fortune 200, Fortune 100.
But you're fucking good at it, Adam.
But that's the thing, is that, like, that's a transferable skill. I ran Saturday sales meetings. I mean, I ran meetings once a week for 13 years. The first month that I'm at this company with people that have been doing this 20, 30 years, the first thing I say is, hey, the Scrum Master is out today. Can someone run the stand-up?
Yeah.
There are things that come naturally when you work in retail to take shit. You know what I mean? The first week I was there, I went to a company-wide meeting, like 80 something people in this meeting. And this guy talked very ill of me for not being for being a junior engineer in the meeting. I was told to be there. I went there. I didn't bother me none. But, you know, the dude, he said something condescending, or I didn't care. I was like, whatever, man, I'm here. I took it on the chin well enough. The dude was fired the next day. And I know that's the thing in court. See, that's the thing in other industries. You're not groomed to take that level of shit. In retail, it's just part of your DNA. Like, if somebody came up and made a condescending remark to me, that was like every half hour on the hour for 50 hours a week where I used to work. You know what I mean? But now, like, you just take it on the chin. It's just one of those things where there are things that anyone watching this, or anyone who follows your show that's in retail thinking they can't do anything else.
Yeah, you can.
You absolutely can, and you can more than you think you can.
Even if it's something that is so out of your wheelhouse that it's not even anything you can imagine yourself doing. Trust me.
You're right.
Right.
You have skills to get out and do something else.
And
I didn't think I was a carpenter.
Yeah. And then you do stuff like me. You go completely backwards. You know, I gave it all up. I decided when I got laid off, Adam, and you know, they called me and they're like, hey, can you come to Marietta? And I'm like, no, I'll respectfully decline, you know, and all that clicked with me. There was a switch that flipped during all that. And I'm like, man, I've been doing this for 25 years. Let me just try to go the opposite direction to see. And, you know, my job is very menial to a lot of people. I mean, what I do, a lot of people, I mean, I have peers in the field of retail management that have reached out to me and been like, are you crazy? Why are you doing this? And I'm the happiest now I have been since probably the first 2 or 3 years at Guitar Center. And that's big talk, all right? Because my job's peaceful. I'm not over anybody. I go do a specific thing. I clock out and I go the fuck home. Sure. I missed the money. All right. You know, I made a post on Twitter quite a while back that if somebody asked you about retail management and you getting out of it, and the only thing you can answer that you miss about it is the money, then it's time to go. And it's time to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
It's peaceful now. I mean, sure, I'd love to make the money I was making, but it's not going to happen in the position I'm in. But we're okay. And, you know, I cannot, I've got to tell you, Adam, you and I have talked. Yeah, there's some shit about KSM that pissed me off. All right, there really was. But the one positive that came out of it, I got a year and a half off of working, and I hadn't had that ever in my life. And I've been working for 30 fucking years. And when you do that, your head changes, your headspace changes. You don't have the stresses. You don't have the thoughts that you normally had. And all of a sudden, you're able to realize different things. To your point, you're 100% correct about if you work in retail and you don't think you have transferable skills. Yes, the fuck you do. You have a whole hell of a lot. Same thing, Trent. Everything we, Adam, if all you ever did was music instrument retail, same thing for you, Trent, same thing for me. Guess what? We have skills that are essential elsewhere. And people don't understand that.
Yep.
You know, all three of our cases, we all got to a point where we were elevated to management.
Correct.
Right. So that opened up a whole other set of skills.
Yes.
Right. Being able to lead meetings, you know, taking that leadership role, being able to step in and be a leader in any situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are skills that go a long way.
Yes, it does. And and you two, both of you, there are great things in your future. You guys are young. You guys have a long way to go. There is so much that I cannot wait to see what you guys do. For me, I'm old. I'm just riding out at this point. But you two, look, Adam, I will tell you again on camera, you're a talented motherfucker. You got a lot going for you. Just go get it. And Trent, you too. I see the videos of you posting building bridges and shit, and I'm like, I would shit my pants if I was up there. You know, go get it, man. You know, life is too short. Go do what you want to do. Have fun and make it worth it. And, you know, Adam, there's so much I think about you. You're an exceptional person. All right. And I say that because you put up with a lot, and your fuse was very, 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 very long. So
there might be a person or two that would contest that, but I appreciate that.
Trust me, from the outside looking in, your fuse is much longer than the people on the inside looking out think. So, and Trent, look, man, to your point, we've made lifelong relationships with that crew at Guitar Center. You know, I talked to Matt Head a lot. You know, I mean, we made lifelong relationships in that business. And that is something that I can't say about a lot of the places I worked. And Crunch Guy just pops in. Rick Valero, good to see you. Another long-term relationship.
I would agree with that, man. I can't think of any other job I've had in my life where I made friends that have been friends for this long.
Right.
Right.
I mean, like Trent, if you called me, you're like, oh shit, I'm in South Carolina. I don't know where I'm at. I need somewhere to sleep. Here's my couch. You know, I mean, that's how it is. And, you know, there were some things that happened in my life that were quite personal that didn't have to do with the Guitar Center that were bad. And I had some people in that store step up and do some amazing things that I never asked for. And, you know, I'm upset in a way that I thought that getting back into the industry would be the same. It's not, and it's not KSM's fault. It's just a different business now. And do I like it? No, but it just is what it is. I will say that to the motherfuckers who look at me and say, when the tire's flat, you don't clean the windshield, I will say this: you can fuck off. But anyway, I got to get that there. But anyway, guys, it's been a long one. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Yeah.
Adam,
No,
I hope you do continue doing well. I need you to let us know, tweet when you get your next Substack up. Your writing skills are amazing. Also, too, before we go, you did add some stuff to some books. Can you pimp that real quick?
Oh yeah, most of my writing, my book Baseball for Kids, and then I've got a couple of things. One of which is already published for the SABR, which is the Society of American Baseball Research, talking about Jackie Robinson, and then I've got another contribution I just signed on to. That'll be sometime in the next few months. But I've got those. Most of the writing is in baseball, and then, but I do have the Substack open and closed, which I have volume 1. That's chapter 1 that just came out. I promise chapter 2 is on the way. It's like just keeps getting moved around on the to-do list. But I'm going on vacation this week, and that'll be an opportune time for me to catch up on that.
As a baseball fan, I have something terrible to tell you. My father was a huge baseball fan, all right? And when he was a young child, he collected baseball cards. And he had baseball cards that he glued to notebook paper. And we're talking about the original Washington Nationals. We're talking about Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
And
I have a Greg Maddux rookie card that I put in the back tires of my bike to make it sound like a motorcycle.
And my father these days is like, God, I wish I had that stuff. But he had like all this like vintage baseball stuff that would have went for like millions of dollars probably. And he ruined it because he was a kid and he glued them to a piece of notebook paper.
Yeah. Been there, done that. But,
so Trent, give us your closing comment, sir.
Man, thanks for having me on. I had fun doing this. I guess like my closing thing would be, I spent 9 years with Guitar Center and 9 years in music instrument retail, and the overwhelming majority of it was good. It was good times with good people, a lot of good friends. I got to do a lot of really cool things that I otherwise would have never gotten the opportunity to do, ever. I got in over my head thinking I could get into management in what had become a behemoth of a corporate monster. And I didn't survive the culture shock, because that's what it was. It was a giant culture shock, and I didn't survive it, but it was for the better.
Yeah.
And looking back, I had a blast, man. I think just overwhelmingly, yeah, dude, it was all in all a good time. I had fun up until the point I became a store manager, and that ruined it for me.
I'm right there with you. Look, my wife struggles with me because I had a moment. All right. I've been doing this retail thing forever. They tell you that you can never find your perfect job sometimes. And I'll be honest with you, when I first came to Guitar Center and the 3 to 4 years afterwards, it was the perfect job. I had never been happier in my work in my life. And as I've gotten older, I realize it's just a snapshot of time. And you wish to have that again. It's like I said, it's kind of like magic in a bottle. Those years were amazing to me. I got to do things people told me I'd never be able to do. I got to meet people that I never thought I would meet. I made long-lasting friendships. And to me, that is the essence, and that's how I remember my time. Is it was an amazing, amazing time in my career. And the saddest part of it is there's nowhere else you can go to do that now. It was,
I don't even know.
encapsulated. It was a small window, all the stars aligned and whatnot, and it was perfect. It really was.
I don't know that you could get that experience out of, any of the big box. I guess Guitar Center and maybe Sam Ash. I don't know, but any big box music instrument retailer, like I just don't think at this point you're not gonna get that kind of experience that we got.
It's over. It's done, and it's hard, and that's a lesson I had to learn. I mean, it really did. I mean, I'm kind of mad about some of the things that went down when I was in Atlanta, but that's whatever. But it's a different time. I mean, you're looking at almost 10 to 12 years difference in time frames.
Yeah.
I went searching for something that was perfect for me. I used to say that you would have to drag me kicking and screaming out of Guitar Center. And we did so much with so great people. And I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, and I miss it. I'm not going to lie. I miss it. But it's like history. It's a far gone past. It's done. And, and I appreciate what happened when I moved to Atlanta. I appreciate that I met Adam. I think Adam's great. There were people there at the store that were good, and there's people in the hierarchy. They're not bad people. They're just kind of misguided, and that's not their fault. They're falling back on things that used to work. Okay. It's not that they're terrible people at all. It's just, they kind of refuse to grow. And I'm going to go ahead and say this because it's public knowledge that company that we worked for is getting absorbed by Darth Vader and the Death Star. GC and Music and Arts acquired the competition. None of us know the details of it. We just know it's happening. We'll see what happens. And the scariest part about all that is, look, Guitar Center's not been on good financial standing for a very fucking long time. And I don't know how the fuck they swung this and made this happen. I think, Adam, you would agree with me there.
Look, I can tell you that from around 2015-ish, Guitar Center started making a real big push on band and orchestra.
Yeah, okay, that's cool, but they went through bankruptcy. Guitar Center's not exactly in great financial shape. All right, that's the point. It's like, how did y'all swing this shit? How did y'all decide the biggest competitor in our market there in that state, we're just going to swoop in and get them? So one of two things either happened. They had some financial windfall where they got tons of fucking money, or the opposite said, fuck it, I'm tired, and here, you get it all at a discount.
That's more the latter than the former.
Okay. But, and that's amazing to me. And look, I'll be honest with you, it's a historic moment that people don't understand. That was a war, Adam, that was a war. That was, those two, I remember working at GC and Scott and other people from there walking through. I mean, it was a big deal for quite a while. And it is kind of shocking to me in a weakened state that GC really is in, that they were able to pull it off.
A lot of blood on that battlefield.
Boy, not mine anymore, not yours, and not Trent's. So, guys, listen, thank you so much for being here. This is something I wanted to talk about.
Thank you.
There's so much more we can get into. And Adam, I hope you appreciate the fact that I didn't go down a really dark path.
Well, maybe you know what? I'm out of the game, so maybe
one day we will. But I don't think it's necessary. I think people need to understand that you can get a lot out of this business if you get in the right place. So
I got dark
That's
stories
right.
about it if you want to hear them, but that's a whole other.
yeah,
episode.
we'll talk later.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you so much, Adam. I wish you all the success in the world with your coding and doing whatever. Please go check out his links. If you're a baseball fan, go follow his shit, because here's the thing: he's a great writer as it is, but when he's writing about the stuff he's passionate about, it's even more over the top. So go check his stuff out. And Trent, thank you so much. Eventually, we're going to get to this UFO thing.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm down for that.
All right, we just gotta get your camera working.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'll get. Sorry about the video thing. I'm still confused why Skype wouldn't let you see me, because I can see myself. But whatever.
Whatever. All right. So everybody have a great night. Thank you guys. I'm gonna kill this stuff. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm sure you guys have stuff to do as well.
Yeah.
So everybody have a great night, and we will see you next time. Thanks.